I've got some shaping techniques, and you know, this is what these projects are all about. They're more about the techniques than they are the project. The project is just icing on the cake. It's a byproduct of what we're trying to pass on to you. So we're more concerned about the techniques. So these planing techniques, using the spoke shave, we're going to be using next. Whether to use a chisel, we've got chamfers to put all around here. We've got to shape the head to give it its aerodynamic. I don't care what anybody says. Nobody will agree with me, probably. But when I shape the head like this one, this whole mallet works better in my hand. It's what we call balance. Is aesthetic just something that looks good? Or is aesthetic something that feels and looks good? Or is it more that it feels good? I think it's probably as much to do with either. But I love the idea that it fits my hand. Take this apart. Now I won't take it apart yet because I'm going to make some of these marks on here. So this first scallop starts 1.5 inches from here. So that's probably going to be close enough. So you can mark this like this. So 1.5 from there. And then this end, it looks like it's the same, 1.5. So let's go a little bit more. I'm using my finger as a gauge this time instead of just eyeballing it. This will just give you a start and stop. And then this scallop down this area here is about 1/4 inch in. So what I do is I just set my finger gauge, there's 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, quarter, on every one of the facets. Oops. Then turn it around and do the opposite corner here. And I'll show you what we've got in a minute. So that's what we have on each corner. We've just got this depth here. Got it. Then between the two, just eyeball the center. And then once you've eyeballed it, just check yourself. See how close you are. So I am 80 millimeters there, and I'm 80 millimeters there. So you can't see my hand, so you can. So there, 80 millimeters and 80 millimeters. Okay, what's that in inches? 3 1/4 and 3 1/4. So then just make this. This is going to be a center point for you to gauge the bottom of the hollow that you're scalloping out there. So that's going to get you close enough. On this part here, we're going to leave this protruding, but we can round this slightly like this because we're going to be doing that anyway. So that's one. And then onto this, I'm using my arc of my hand here. So I just make an arc here like this. To get these the same, I just pull this gauge line like this and like this. And that's going to be close enough. So that's got most of it done. We'll come back to some more of that in a minute. So first off, we're going to shape the handle. Just shot that loose, if it will come loose. There we go. Show you a couple of ways to get this. So this is the end of the handle. So I'm going to go in the vise like this here. I'm going to use a spoke shave. I'm going to use a spoke shave anyway. I wouldn't normally just use a chisel, but I could. But this will get me. So I'm going to use the spoke shave on this one. Like this. And I just elongate my strokes. Now I'm going up into end grain there. So a little bit more here. Then I'm going to set this a little bit shallower so it takes off less. And then I'm going to pull this here so I get a smooth cut down into the bottom. And if I need to, usually I don't need to, I'd take a scraper like this and just clean up the surface fibers here, like this. And I don't know if you can see there. There's my line, so I kept my line there. I lost it there, so if you've lost it, you could go like that. No, don't do that. Okay, here's another method. Here, let me see, how can you see this? This is another method. You just go with a wide chisel right on that center line, somewhere there, just pop it on the corner, and then come down here from the high point. Try and feel for the grain to make sure the grain isn't dragging you deeper. Can't see it that way. Let me come from the other end so you can see it. You can do it this way too, just with your upper body, stabbing. But just feel for the grain first, and once you have that grain moving, and you know its direction and it's not trying to trick you and take you deeper, you can take it off that way. Now I'm going to go with my spoke shave just to refine it, like that. Same from this end here. That's pretty close. Little end grain in the catchment in the bottom there, so just clean up those end grain fibers, clean off your pencil lines. That's that one. It's nice really, isn't it? Everybody likes this, I think. Can't imagine not. Keep consciousness of your pencil lines, your start and stops. It's ready to go. The kids love this. You got to get your kids in the shop. There we go. Scrape off your pencil lines. You could plane those too, as long as you don't come up near the head area. Well, this works fine. All right. You could sand that. I'm not sure whether you need to. It feels nice to me, but if you just took some, I don't know, 250 grit maybe, if you wanted to. This is just personal really. A little light sanding, like that. That feels pretty good to my hand. It's actually roughened it from my planing. So on this end here now, can you see that this is slightly out of square? That's because I took all the taper off one side. All right, so, but I want to round the end, so I'm going to come on here, maybe 3/16, which is about 4 or 5 mil from the end. And I'm going to take a little bit more off the other side. Not quite there. Like that. Now how would I do that? You could chisel it, you could file it, you could use a rasp. I'm going to show you how I would chisel this. Just pop this like that, and then take off a little bit less, like this. So that works fine, but it doesn't get me flat, it doesn't get this arc, continuous arc that I want. The other way would be to do the whole thing with the rasp, and that works fine too. This is a cabinet maker's rasp. The rasp is going to leave a consistent surface, but not a smooth surface. So now I've got my shape. That was fast, not inconsequential. I think it's pretty good. So now I can take off those flats with the rasp. Now I could use a file on top of that, and I love the way this turns out. Watch here. Ooh, bit of vibration there. So drop this lower in the vise to get rid of the vibration. Like this. And this, almost has a soapy texture. It's lovely when you're working with it like this. That harmonics, isn't that beautiful? On this area here, on the arc, I don't want these square edges because my hands are going to catch against it. Take your file and go across the corner and follow the arc so you get a lovely crisp corner there. Same here, chamfer should I say. Same there. Just take that corner off because your hands are going to be up against it a lot of the time. On here I've got hard corners again, so I'd use my plane usually. Oops. So just on here, 2 swipes, 3 swipes to each corner, so it's uniform. That feels so much better. And the same in here. So I'm going to go down the hill here. And down here. Okay. So I've got to do the round on the end of here exactly the same, no different. So go with your chisel like this, like that, like that, like that, like that. Just saves the rasp. You know, rasps can be very expensive tools, and the chisel edge you can restore, the rasp you can't generally. So I get an arc to the center for now. Like that. Same on this one here. You can see me take this one off, I think. Right on that cut line there, like that. If you find a lot of resistance there, just take half a bite. In other words, you can go halfway on like this, and a bit more, a bit more. With your file. And you can shape these protrusions later to whatever you want. You know, and what I'm going to do probably is knock these corners off and clean up this other side here, like this. And then I might like to do something like this. I'm going to take my spoke shave, go right across this corner here, go corner to corner. I like that. I think it looks good. I like the way that would look. There, I have this feature, I suppose. So that's the handle finished. Let me see how it looks in here. It's going to work for now. It's not perfect. because it's not to final length. So I'm going to leave it. That's good. I'm going to leave it protruding, and then in 3 weeks' time, I won't cut any more off here because I like the way it looks. I'll just take a shaving off one of these faces, try it in, tighten it up, another shaving until it protrudes the right distance, which will be something like this or this, plenty. That's protruding 1/4 of an inch on the finished outside edge. So now we've just got the head left to do. On here. Now I like the way this fits in the mortise this way, so what I do is I make an X on here and an X in here. It just seemed to seat better, so I'm going to keep that. So on here now we've got to take, I'm going to work on this outside face here to take off these extremes here. So how do I do that? I could just go with the plane like this. Set it quite deep. If I go square across like this, this is going to break off. But if I angle my plane like this, usually it won't. I'm not saying it will never, because wood is so unpredictable. I take a full pass with the plane from one side to the other. Like this, and I avoid the mortise hole here because this is going to show, and this could break off if I plane across that mortise hole. So I look at my line, just to get my arc close. Now then, see how that looks. Before I get to my line, I want to see how it looks. It's still not enough for me. I think the line is more where I want to get to. So I can keep going. This is easier this way than with the grain. So I'm going to take this down to my line like this. So I've got a definite reet down the middle there, a ridge. So I've got a flat, and a flat here. Then take the ridges off, like this. And then from here, I'm going to plane here in a sweeping cut from the center line towards the outside, like that. So there's my line, and you can see this graceful arc in here. What if I wanted to do it a different way? What about this for another option? Let me just draw something on there. At least you can see where I'm shooting for. Like that. So I follow this arc from the flat, from this point here, from the entry hole of the mortise. Like that. See that? It's very fast, very effective. Split it off, get it out of the way, and then I'm going to go to this side. And then join up somewhere here. Down here. So I'm pretty close now. Now another method really to clean up is to go across the grain like this. Like this, just to take off the high ridges. Then you go with your plane again. Remember, you want to keep these crisp lines in your mortise hole. So you have to really go from the high along or with the grain now. And down into the outer edge like this. And that's got me just down there. Can you see? So we followed this gracefully. Now then, if you'll notice on my mallet here, I'm also rounding this plane too. Got that. So I'm leaving this middle section. I go along this area here, 1/4 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch there, 4 to 6 mil, anywhere like that. This time, I'm going to use the plane again. I could use the spoke shave. What about the spoke shave? That works so nicely. Look at this. Okay. Okay, now this way, across the ridge again, towards the middle of this midsection here, and from this one here, I can smell the essence of the oak, just the friction. So there's no dust in the atmosphere. I used a bandsaw, that's gone now, hopefully. But this is what I'm smelling now, is the friction of the sole of my spoke shave on the very fiber of the oak, which is something I really don't get with the machine. So let's take a look at this side. I think the spoke shave is my best option. So watch here now, 45 degrees all the way down to the pencil line like this. Now I'm going up the grain here, so I have to turn around, come down here till I get to my line. Okay, and then I can take sweeping strokes to arc the outside here. This just takes a little skill to master, but it's the first tool I ever bought for my children. When they were 3 and 4 and 5, I gave them a spoke shave, because it's very much a doing tool. This really gets them involved, engages the senses. They feel like they're involved, they're doing it. Okay, so that's that one done. So I'm going to leave that. I probably wouldn't sand that, scrape it or anything. I would leave the undulations in there. So now I have the sides to do. Remember, we had this grain, awkward grain in here. We're trying to read the grain. This broader surface, probably not the best to use the spoke shave. Probably best to use the plane. So I'm taking an angle here. About 1/4 of an inch down, like we did on the other. And across the top. Now here, I'm going with straight cuts at the moment. And what that gives me is a curved line on this face, and I'm going to leave that. I'm not going to try to follow this necessarily, but on this face I will try to round it like this. This grain is just very beautiful here. It's just lovely. So I've got a round on this face, a round on this face. I was planing this way, so I have to flip over end for end to guarantee my grain run. And this is, remember this was that rough grain? Let me show you here. 1/4 of an inch down here, 1/4 of an inch down here. And then we feather into that with the plane, like this. And And now you'll see why it wasn't necessary to plane all 4 faces. So we take equal amounts from both sides because we want the mallet to be balanced. Half an hour on one side, half an ounce on one side would make an imbalance, I think. Look how the grain emerges from that rough sawn bandsaw work from when it was milled in the mill. All the way till all the bandsaw marks are gone. And I'm not going to scrape or sand this outside face because I want to leave the marks from my hand tools in the surface. So I've already done these end grains, but I don't want to leave sharp corners because they're hard on your hand. So here's where we go this time. The spoke shave is the best to follow the arc that we just created on these outside edges. So watch this. Follow the outside edges and take off a chamfer till it looks the same size as this side. Here and here. So I'm pulling across and up, and I've got my spoke shave angled so I don't get any breakout on these corners. Blowout in America, I think. I'm sure everybody understands me. So I'm getting some breathing exercise here. I'm getting some upper muscle, upper body training, hand-eye coordination. And I am enjoying this. Because I'm doing it. You're enjoying it because you're watching it, but you're going to get more fun from doing it. So one last step here. I don't know, a bit more than we did. 3/8 of an inch. 3/8 of an inch. And stay away from the corners by 3/4 of an inch. Like this. And this. And then short stabbing movements down from one side and down from the other, taking care not to go beyond the lines we set. So now I'm meeting in the middle. Sometimes the grain is going to be against you. There we have this scallop on this side. When this starts to get worn, this line here, let me show you what we have. Can you see that? This line here will become more visible. It will be more, I don't know, just apparent really. It's just going to be. I'm going into end grain there, very unusual. So it means I can go in and out from one side. There, I've got pencil marks in here that I don't really want to see, particularly. Scraper is better than the eraser. Now when we arch this end, we could have, like on this one, I took off the corner. So I'm going to make sure that I put that back, just to make sure there's no breakout. And then you just apply whatever finish you want. You could use shellac, you could use boiled linseed oil, would be very traditional. 2-3 coats over 2 or 3 days. Put a coat on now and then leave it overnight. Put another coat on tomorrow, leave it overnight. Go to my blog and see the dangers of using boiled linseed oil for flammability. It will spontaneously combust. There I am, and there is my mallet. It's going to last me for the rest of my life, and this has taken 2 hours, probably.